Hey everyone, welcome back to the Superhero Show. Now this week, our colleague Eric Goldman got a scoop.
Yes, he was talking to director James Wan about his new MacGyver TV show, but James is obviously directing Aquaman as well, and he asked him about the character. James said he's the Wolverine of the DCEU. He says he's the outsider who gets pulled into this world and he kind of doesn't want to belong, and he was doing his own thing. He prided freedom. That plays nicely into who the character is. He's like a reluctant superhero, the reluctant king. So saying that, yeah, his kind of, where he's coming from is similar to Wolverine.
That definitely, obviously, that tallies with what we've seen in the Justice League footage about him being a bad boy, drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels in Russia.
Yep.
But like that has got me more interested in Aquaman. It gives you a little bit more, because we know obviously by saying Wolverine, that's good shorthand for a lot of qualities we know.
Yeah,
because we've seen so many Wolverine movies. The person who's probably going to butt heads most in the Justice League with Batman or whoever assumes the leadership role there. But it's also got me quite excited about James Wan's Aquaman movie.
Yeah.
Because, well, I really like James Wan's movies anyway.
Yeah,
I really like
we're big fans.
I think he's a really great stylist, and I think you need that because that's the movie where they're going to have to create so much.
Yeah, and it's going to walk a fine line from not looking silly. Like Eric was even asking him about people speaking underwater, and James was like, "Yeah, we can't use speech bubbles, so it's tricky to." And you know, he talks to fish. Like, it's going to be tricky to make that stuff work without it being laughable. Yeah,
because there's certain glimpses in the Wonder Woman trailer of what our home looks like, and you know, the only other film that's done that, like obviously we compare it to Marvel, but it's just because they've done a lot of these things already. Is Thor did that a bit because they had to like set up this entirely other kingdom, which kind of invokes classical civilizations in some way, and it'd be interesting to see how Aquaman tackles that and what he uses as the model, where he tries to riff against, I don't know, Grecian architecture, or whether he tries to do something entirely new.
But it'll be interesting how much that's down to James anyway, because obviously we're going to meet Aquaman properly in Justice League, where some of that work will already have been done. You know, we don't know how much we're going to see of his backstory there. James also said that, which I thought was quite funny, that he'll be watching Justice League to see what doesn't work. Like when they're doing Aquaman stuff, what was the quote? Yeah, I'll be honest, in some ways JL will be an experiment for me to see what works and what may not work as well, so.
That's weird, isn't it? Thinking about that, it's like you've got someone's demo tape and you're like, no, get rid of that.
Because he said that Zach tried to bring him on board when he can and was trying to involve him, but equally he was in post on Conjuring 2, so he was pretty busy.
Yeah, so actually, last week I spoke to Kevin Conroy, who was promoting Batman: The Killing Joke. And
was that interview on the site?
Yes, it is. Go read it. Thanks, Chris. And I talked to him about the specific challenges of playing Batman when he's in Justice League, and he said, you know, it's a very unique problem because it's like you don't have many lines anyway, and then when you're in this ensemble with 5 or 6 other actors, you have even fewer lines. Yeah. So that's tricky because they're establishing Aquaman in that movie. But only having a few lines actually plays in quite nicely to the Wolverine role, because we've seen Wolverine mainly operating in an ensemble structure. And I wonder if that's what he's riffing on, what he's already seen from Justice League footage, where he's the guy within the group who is always pulling in his own direction. And I think, what do you think about Jason Mamoa being that guy?
I've met Jason Mamoa, and he's a big personality.
Can we insert that picture?
Yeah. There's a picture of me with him, and
it's forced perspective though, isn't it?
I think I tweeted it out. It was a long time ago. It was when he did Conan, and the first comment underneath it was, "Why is Chris standing in a ditch?" Look, he's a tall man, and I'm no Peter Crouch. But what I got from him was that he's really funny, and he's got a big personality that sometimes doesn't come through in the roles he plays, because he tends to play these sort of stiff heroic types. But yeah, I think he could be really good fun in that role. Yeah,
because I think obviously what people know him most widely for is Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones, and it's very hard because he's obviously speaking in a foreign dialect, well, a fictional dialect, a language. It's hard to really get that across, but he does seem quite funny in real life, like you said, because there's it's a great photo from the red carpet for Suicide Squad in London the other week, where Henry Cavill is doing an interview to camera, and he looks very dapper but very serious, and you see Jason Mamoa in the distance running towards him, and he just goes behind him and picks him up. So more of that in Justice League.
More picking up Superman. We also learnt who the villain will be. or we think.
Yeah.
So, was it the rap said it? Black Manta is the thoughts.
Yeah.
Although we asked James about that and he wouldn't go on the record. But it seems like the logical villain for him.
It's the most probably famous of all the Aquaman villains.
I don't know that well, so I was doing some research, and there's at least 3 backstories that he has, but all of them involve him disliking Aquaman from an early age and seeking revenge, you know, spending his life trying to get revenge against him. So there'll be an element of that. But I like his different powers. Well, he doesn't have any powers, but his suit that gives him powers. That's pretty cool. He's got a submarine. He's got a suit that gives him strength, can survive deep pressures of the ocean, bulletproof, helps him to breathe underwater, and it's got a jetpack.
So I was thinking, that makes it sound like most of the film will be in the ocean, but I just can't see them doing that for budgetary reasons.
So do you think it'd be more a fish out of water tale?
Get out.
No.
I wonder if it's more a case that he'll threaten humanity.
Yeah.
I think it'll have to be, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of these films, they just take an idea of a villain and totally do their own thing, don't they?
Yeah, but everything about, like, I'm definitely sold on the Wonder Woman movie. I think that trailer looks magnificent, and I'm really excited about it for lots of reasons. And the more I hear about the Aquaman movie, like James Wan, these comments, like I'm getting a better handle on what that movie could be.
And at this point, we've said this a lot the last couple of years, we want to see something different. Yeah. You know, the Marvel movies felt like they've become a bit repetitive. They're kind of going over old ground, telling the same story to an extent. And that's why we've been, the ones we've been getting excited about, first was Guardians of the Galaxy. Even though it told a similar story, it was in space, and that was enough to make it feel quite different. Doctor Strange is another one where the parallel dimensions, we're hoping we're going to see something really different to what's gone before. And then Aquaman is the one, just being underwater. Hopefully it'll be a new kind of visual language and just something to...
Which I think, like, the possibilities for the action sequences can be totally different than you've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And I think James Wan is such an interesting visualist that I think he's a great person to bring it to film for the first time.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome. So we're excited for Aquaman. 2 bits of feedback. So the first one is from Christian. Christian says, they should make Spider-Man into an Avengers-like franchise. How can they do that? Here come the bullet points. Excellent. Introduce the concept of the multiverse in the next movie. While making Tom Holland the focus, also bring back Tobey Maguire as an old seasoned Spider-Man, bring back Andrew Garfield as the tormented Spider-Man, reintroduce Emma Stone as Spider-Gwen, cast Donald Glover as Miles Morales. That's it. Obviously, this needs a killer script. So I guess what Christian is riffing off is the idea of Spider-Verse, which is a recent comic book storyline by Dan Slott. And that is awesome. It's a great idea, and it's brilliant in comics where you can, like, subsume 40, 50 years of comic book history. I just don't think it would play to a mainstream audience.
No.
Also, I think it takes Spider-Man further and further away from the MCU, which he's just become a big part of.
Yeah.
So while I love the idea, I can't imagine them green-lighting it.
Interesting.
Sorry, Christian.
Sorry about that, Christian.
I don't make the decision, it can still happen. So.
You used to, didn't you?
I used to, but then Kevin came along.
Tom from Australia here. Do you think it's fair to compare Marvel to DC? With a similar premise and use of licensed music, many have negatively compared Suicide Squad with Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Should critics be making those comparisons, or do you think it should be critiqued entirely on its own merits? It's a good question. I mean, I immediately tweeted something about how Guardians of the Galaxy did a similar thing, but better, and got some grief. Yeah, it's weird. Comparing Marvel and DC, it's just it's in the same way that you compare Bourne and Bond. You need reference points to.
Well, nothing, like, just in a very kind of abstract way, nothing can be critiqued in a vacuum, because you have no standard of comparison.
Yeah.
You necessarily have to make comparisons, say this is better than that thing. And their projects, like you're saying, Bourne and Bond, are so alike. These are 2 comic book companies that have been publishing comics for 50, 60, 70 years about superheroes in a shared universe.
Yeah.
It's natural to invite comparison. And the fact that Marvel have done this for like 5, 10 years longer, it just gives you a lot of ready-made comparisons.
And maybe it isn't fair, but it isn't going to stop. And equally, you know, we'll compare them to previous films in their own universe as well.
I think the unfair thing would be to be like, I have Thor in mind, Wonder Woman comes along, right, automatically I'm comparing it to that. But if there's something Wonder Woman that kind of necessitates a comparison, I think that's perfectly valid.
Well, I did that feature on how similar the storylines of and structure and certain moments were between Batman and Superman and Captain America Civil War, and it was funny that they both come along within a month of each other, telling quite similar stories. So you'd be remiss not to acknowledge that when you're reviewing it. But
it's if you
or writing
take it to an
about
extreme,
it. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we do it a lot on the show. I'm conscious of the fact that we compare them, but it's because this is a show dedicated to superhero movies and adaptations, and it's natural that we're just going to be just talking about them just like people watching the show are. If you have any more feedback though, how can they reach us, Chris?
No idea.
superheroShow@IGN.com, and until next week, for everything on DC, Marvel and everything else, come to IGN.